Hello and welcome back to another episode of the FPL Show on the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. I'm Matt.
And I'm Daniel.
Hey Daniel, guess what?
What, Matt?
It's another bloody double game week, mate.
Ah,
Another one.
I'm
Uh,
being spoiled.
Honestly, man, same teams as well. We might as well be like just an exclusive Arsenal and Man City
I know it's sick,
podcast.
doesn't it?
It's same teams all the time. Like I'm sure they're gonna end up with like 48 games at the end of the season.
At least
Um,
we're not going to have Man City talk about next season, though. So that's all
yeah,
right.
yeah. Did someone say expulsion?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it could be us in 10 years' time. Who knows? But I mean, hopefully we learn from their mistakes.
Yes.
Amanda Staveley is currently scribbling out all of those plans that Man City shared when she went for those meetings a few years ago. So yeah, I mean, this week there's a little bit to talk about. A lot of Man City and Arsenal chat, um, both of whom performed quite poorly this week. And we're also going to talk about how we kind of set up ourselves for upcoming blank game weeks and all those other double game weeks that are upcoming, whilst trying to keep good players in the team because there are a lot of players who are doing well, who are popular picks, who might end up being dumped because of there's you're only allowed like 15 players in the team.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of maneuver certain players out. So before we dive into that, though, just a quick reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. We are very close to 10,000 subscribers. It's not just us. There's, of course, the All the Smiling Faces podcast. We do match previews and match reviews and much, much more. You can also become a member for £2.99 a month. That gives you bonus content and access to the Telegram group, which is absolutely buzzing. Are we ready to go?
Ready to go.
So we are currently almost at the end of double game week 22. We still have Man United versus Leeds to go. So obviously anything that we kind of talk about is really caveated with there's still another game to play, injuries to come, rotation, things during the week that could standard stuff. Right. First thing that I want to talk about then, right, has Pep Guardiola given up being a good manager to just wage war on fantasy Premier League and Premier League managers?
I think he thinks he's living in some kind of FIFA simulation where you can just.
Right.
Yeah, I remember like FIFA 99 when Roberto Carlos was my favourite player. So I just used to play him up front. And he just,
Yep.
just score 10 goals every game because I was playing on amateur, as I did when I was 9 years old.
Yep.
That's kind of how I feel Pep Guardiola treats this team sometimes. Kind of feel a bit sorry for some of the players. We're all getting moved about. There's no consistency. And that's the thing with a back line. There is no consistency. There's nothing to build upon. Edison's never been like an amazing goalkeeper, like solid at the back. Like he's an okay shot stopper. Like he's good in the box. Shots from distance he's always struggled with, and he's great with his feet, but he's not particularly commanding. And I think with all the changes at the back, he's getting exposed all the time. And then the rest of the boys kind of don't know when they're going to play. I imagine morale isn't great, especially with Joao or Cancelo kicking
That was
off.
beautiful.
I know. I should
Beautiful.
be using it. Booting off and being shipped off to Bayern Munich within days with an obligation to pay 75 million or something for him. It just sort of sums everything up. None of the players look happy. If I was Phil Foden, I'd probably be absolutely seething, even though he was actually one of the players that allegedly stuck up for Pep in the bust up against Cancelo. So
Oh wow.
it
Okay.
looks like an unhappy camp, and the news that everyone now knows about, that they are cheating bastards, you'll leave it anyway, is an interesting one, because I think the go-to sort of thought process is, well, they're doing badly, it's all falling apart, Pep might jump ship, you know, they're in line for an absolute paste, and they've been changing the team, as you've said. But I also remember when Italy went through their scandal with Juventus, threatening the referees, choosing which referees they wanted for games, got relegated. AC Milan got docked points for the following season. Third place Inter ended up getting the title like 3 years later. And they went on to win the 2006 World Cup because they had this siege mentality, this Jose Mourinho style siege mentality. It'll be interesting to see if Man City gain that or if they just completely capitulate. One thing that I can't see happening is them staying the same, being good, if not a little inconsistent. I think they're either going to be a car crash or become a ridiculously difficult team to beat again.
Yeah, do you know, I agree. They should be bloody ashamed of themselves. I think in terms of what like is going to happen with Man City, I do agree with you. I think with this formation, what was it, 4-4-2, random like two midfielders, that can't continue because that was hopeless. And I can't see Pep sticking with it. Although he's quite stubborn, he's always want to kind of be like, no, if something's not going to work. Like
Yeah,
against Spurs, they lost the XG battle. They had far more possession, weirdly, even though like they only had two midfielders. The formation allowed them to keep the ball. They just didn't seem to create as many high quality chances as what Spurs
their
did.
defenders cutting in, weren't they? Were just in. They sort of became extra midfielders in that game at times, which we've seen before. It was at the start of not last season, the season before. I don't know if you can remember when, as it happens, Tottenham played Man City and got absolutely battered and drew 2-2. But it was a total maul, and Pep sort of played with underlapping fullbacks. It's what Arteta does now. He sort of did a little bit of that, but not with the starting formation that he normally has. So there was no transitional period. It was just fixed and shit.
Yep. And I think with getting rid of Cancelo, right? Cancelo's now gone on to get 2 assists in 2 games. He needed
assists.
Yeah, and I have not seen them. No, I've not seen them.
Some horrendous defending. Honestly, they give him the keys to the Allianz to put his crosses in. Like, they were obviously great crosses, but they couldn't have made it any easier for him.
But that's the thing. Like, so they've sold Cancelo, and he's doing so well, even though, albeit against poor defending. You want like Rico Lewis to put a performance in, and by all accounts, dreadful. Like, you want the person who's kind of replacing the person you've just shipped off because they were a bad egg to step up. And I think they're in total disarray. I think if it was just a case of like the team's been doing really, really well and then this financial fair play kind of thing dropped on them, you would kind of imagine they would have a siege mentality. But the fact that they've been underperforming, Haaland's now blanked in 3 of his last 5 games, doesn't seem to be getting as many shots away. Kevin De Bruyne hasn't scored since game week 14. That team is already on a bit of a slippery slope, and now they've got this to deal with. Like, there was quotes at the start of the season, wasn't there, with Pep, where if he was told, he'd said that if he'd found out he was getting lied to, that he'd be off. Now I can kind of imagine he was probably BSing a little bit, but surely like him hearing this news, and the Premier League have to have like fairly solid grounds to accuse him of over 100 breaches.
Well, it's taken so long for that reason. I think it was since the 2018 data leak. They've then done 5 years worth of research into it to sort of try and bang them to rights. And I think obviously it was over 100 breaches, but I think it breaks down into 4 categories. And the last category is for being an obstruction to the investigation, which apparently they've been at every. So even though they come out and say we welcome these investigations, apparently they try and obstruct them at every possible opportunity, which I think is a sign of guilt.
100%. They totally didn't cooperate with the Premier League, did they? I've got a mate, like my best mate's a Man City fan. Not one of those Man City fans. He's like boyhood Man City fan, who has said like they've been screwed over by the fact they haven't cooperated. We just kind of encouraged them to press further, and ultimately it's just caused what we are now having, which I don't think we're going to see the end of for at least 2, maybe 3 years.
I agree. This isn't a quick fix.
No, and I think you can bet your bottom dollar Man City will go out and spend massively in the summer. They'll continue doing what they're doing, acting as an innocent party until that very last kind of like hammer blow comes crashing down, whatever it may be, whether it's a small fine, transfer embargo, complete expulsion to like conference, which would be very interesting, but would be almost sad from a competition point of view. But you've
Yeah,
got to imagine in 3 or 4 years' time we'll be rubbing our hands because will absolutely walk the league by then. So yeah, just obviously back on the FPL. Then we know that there's a potential that they're going to underperform further. Kevin De Bruyne's since the restart, he's got the same amount of points as Chik Doucouré of Crystal Palace. So he's still 34% owned. Right, got a double coming up. Then he's got Nottingham Forest. He's got Bournemouth.
amazing.
So he plays in game week 25, which is massive, especially for someone like me who has only 7 players
You say that, does he?
in 25.
Yeah. Does
So yeah,
he?
he's not.
Does he?
Oh, I
We
see.
don't. We have absolutely no idea who plays.
I see what
Also,
you did there. I see what you did there.
at this point, Champions League's next week, 14th.
Yeah, that's
So
the other
today,
thing, isn't it?
well, we're recording on. Yeah, it is Tuesday, isn't it? We're recording on a
It is.
Tuesday night. It's a day later than we normally do it. So yeah, so I mean they've got Champions League. Pep is going for the Champions League. I think he said in an interview earlier on this year, he was like, I've just got to win it now, haven't I? So they're going for the Champions League. And I think he's half messing around to see what his best team for the Champions League is going to be. You know, they've got a double. They've got this double with Villa and Arsenal, but they've got Champions League in a week's time.
Yeah.
Terrible. They've got Leipzig away. So they've got an away fixture in Leipzig. And Arsenal in the space of a few days. And people want to be going in for Man City triple ups. Why?
I think the safe bet is Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland to battle the ownership, even though I have zero faith in De Bruyne at the minute.
I wouldn't go De Bruyne. I wouldn't go for a single one of those midfielders. Mahrez got hooked off in 59 minutes. Foden can't get a start for a prayer. You've got Grealish who he might play, he might not, but does he do that much? Is he worth the risk? Bernardo Silva and Gundogan don't seem to get returns anymore. There was one point last season where there were shoo-ins. Like, you've got more chances of just going for Rodri and hoping he pings one from 30 yards or scores a header or something like that. I think Haaland is your play. I honestly think Villa and Arsenal both score against Man City.
Without a doubt. In their last 7, in all competitions, they've conceded 7. So they've won 4, scored 9, conceded 7. Like, you're going absolutely nowhere near the defence, but then you don't want to get triple attack because, like you say, you can't pick who plays. And the one who you would have put your house on playing every week is utter garbage at the minute. Like, unbelievable. So that's kind of the downside. Plus side, though, double game week, right? So for me, we'll have a little chat later on about kind of my problems, but in general.
Yes, nothing with FPL.
Yeah, just a bit of a therapy session. But in terms of like Kevin De Bruyne, whether we hold him because he's got the 2 fixtures and good fixtures coming and the fixture in 25 potentially, or you kind of ship him out because what's the point in having someone in your team who A, might not play, and B, isn't performing at all? Like, is it better to have a Bruno Fernandes who's getting like 6 and above in some weeks in a team that's playing well, albeit blanking in 25?
Got that blank, haven't they? I tell you who I'd go for if I had Kevin De Bruyne, and it was a shoe-in transfer for me to go from Salah to this player. I'd have to take a -4. Would not care less about taking a -4 for it. I'd be bringing in a midfielder, couldn't care less, lower cost, and I'd upgrade one of me draw strikers to Harry Kane.
See, that's what I'm thinking now. Would you do that for a -8 though? because this is something that's on my mind. With that Leicester fixture and Kane having the fixture in 25, I need to get a lot of my players out because I've only got 7 players in 25 and I want to hold on to my free hit. So
Yeah.
I've already done Martinelli to Saka, and
So
I'm
sideways.
I know, but Martinelli, I'm terrified. Honestly, he's not performing. Again, it's this conversation that do we hold players who aren't scoring points
Nah.
for the sake of holding them? Like, I had so much value tied up in him because I've had him since the start, but I've got the money sitting there, and Saka's going to play every game. You bloody hope. Yeah, he won't now, and he's got more of a threat, and it makes me feel a bit more comfortable and safe inside.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the Arsenal triple up is just an absolute must when they have 5 games in 3 game weeks. It's insane. And when you look at the teams, Brentford, Man City, Villa, Leicester, Everton, and then the game after that, they've got Bournemouth. So, I mean, Everton obviously beat them 1-0, but Arsenal are at home this time.
Yep.
We'll see how Everton's away form translates. As far as I'm aware, Sean Dyche's away form with Burnley wasn't fantastic, but at Turf Moor, they were an absolute force defensively at times until sort of that last couple of years when, bless him, he was working with about 25 pence in a caramel Freddo, wasn't he? So he didn't really have a chance. But I think Harry Kane playing in 25, rough fixture against Chelsea. Wolves are okay defensively, but Harry Kane is just the most consistent player on this game, other than Kieran Trippier. Like,
yeah, I'm sick to death of seeing Harry Kane.
I'm sick to the back teeth of him. Hopefully, if I get him as well, he'll stop scoring and then he won't break Shearer's record.
Yeah, good. 60, well, let's do that.
60 off now. He only needs 3 seasons to do that. It's 320s.
Yeah, that's the worry. Like, you've got to think. I mean, he has come out and said he wants to kind of commit his future to Spurs, doesn't he? I think he has got his eye on the record. But you've got to imagine, like, Bayern, Barca, like, who is he realistically going to go to?
Looking for a new forward. They're sick of carrying Benzema with these injuries. Ancelotti's asked for one.
Is that not like Osimhen or something like that? Like, he's going to go for mega money. Him and
Yeah.
him and Kvaradona, like, they're going to go places, and obviously Real Madrid is the place, other than the Mighty Tune.
Other than the Mighty Tune, we're getting them both. I'd love Kvaradona. Kvaratskhelia, what a player. So yeah, I think Kane's the one to go for. If you've got KDB, and I would not give 2 monkeys about. I don't think that's a phrase. I think I made that phrase up. I wouldn't give a monkeys. I wouldn't give 2 shits. I think are the 2 phrases I put together there.
Nice.
Yeah, wouldn't give a shit. Go for Kane with his plump. He always scores against Leicester, and Leicester have got Danny Ward in there. They also have Liverpool's top goal scorer though. So since the restart,
yeah, beautiful.
West Ham, I think you'll have them on toast. Although I did think against us, so I was sat in the leaders end behind the goal for the second half. So I thought Aguerd played very, very well. I thought Ogbonna played well. Actually, I thought the pair of them were really, really good. But different threat with Son, Kane, and Kulusevski. Chelsea, you never know which Chelsea's going to turn up. So that's either what's he called? Kepa Arrizabalaga, 11-pointer, or Harry Kane, 9-pointer. You'll take it. And then Wolves, yeah, I just think he's the most consistent player in the game other than Trips, but certainly out the forwards, you can go with them, feel at ease, because there's no debate. You have to have triple Arsenal, which is probably a good segue into which triple Arsenal.
I mean, we have talked about this over the last few weeks,
yeah.
Purely because of the fact that Arsenal seem to have had about 55 million doubles this year, and I think
who are your triple? What's your triple? You got? I'm guessing I assume you've got a triple.
I don't, but with a hit, I'm going to by the end of this week. It all depends on your team shape and what you want. Like, if you're sitting there with Kane, Mitrovic, and Haaland as a front 3, which quite a few people probably are, you're not going to get Nketiah, but there's a temptation to upgrade a Greenwood, for example, like a fodder striker to Nketiah because of the funds that he like. He's not that much more money, but the likelihood is there's going to be people sitting there with a Gabriel or a White, Saka and Odegaard, or a Martinelli and Odegaard. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to end up with a Gabriel, a Saka, and an Odegaard triple up.
Currently have White, Saka, and Odegaard.
Yeah, and I think Odegaard's now what? I think he's about 35% owned. So he's not a sort of player anymore who's going under the radar. He's a player like what Miguel Almiron became. Like if you don't own him and he gets anything, you are absolutely screwed.
Shafted.
Yeah,
As we both well know.
Oh yes, we both know. Yes.
Matty has a question then. Who's the captain?
On.
Who's the outstanding captain? Is it the no-brainer Haaland, or do you go for one of those Arsenal lads who? Because I assume you'd want to go for Man City or Arsenal with them having the doubles.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's funny that you asked me whether I should captain Haaland or not. Like of all the people who you would probably want to get advice from about when's a good time to captain Haaland.
It's not.
Honestly, if I don't captain him, there's a good chance that he gets a hat-trick in both games. Now, obviously, I'm still sitting here with a triple captaincy chip.
Are you? Oh yeah,
yeah. So I don't want to be that guy, right? Who because of where I'm sitting, I'm still like 2.2 million now, which is still a hefty climb from where I was, but it's still not good. But I'm now sitting here thinking, do I want to be that person who's clinging on and clinging on and clinging on to the chips, and then actually run out of decent times to use them?
Yeah,
it's a nice kind of like comfort and feeling, knowing that I'm quite like my rank's quite poor, but I've still got these chips to kind of cling to. But there's no point if I get to game week 35, which is highly unlikely with all these doubles and things coming up. Honestly, I'm thinking already of like a potential of, because I know Brighton are going to have a decent double. I'm looking at like Mitoma or something stupid like that. My rank can't get much worse. I might just go absolutely rogue, but we'll come to that when the time comes. Obviously, it's nice to have the chips, and when I am going to use the chips, I'll give good reason for it.
Yeah.
I just don't. It's whether or not you think, like you said before, whether Man City are going to turn up with like a siege mentality in Haaland, like after losing. Did they lose? Yes. No. Yes, they lost. After losing against Spurs, it is, and obviously everything that's gone on this week, it would be like typical City to turn up and absolutely turn over. Who was it they're playing? Villa. Villa, who conceded 4 at home to Leicester City.
When was that though?
Last week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they did, didn't they?
So, do you know what I mean? So like, even it's literally just popped into my head now. Do I want a triple captain Erling Haaland against a team who conceded 4 to Leicester City at home, and then also play Arsenal in a must-win game at home as well?
But then Champions League midweek, that's what he's going for.
Yeah, I don't know. So there is the opportunity to triple captain Haaland there for me, but
I don't think he plays. He does play. Sorry, I left a big pause after plays. I don't think he plays like the full 90 minutes in these games. I think he's got an hour against Villa, probably bags a brace and sods off, which he'll still take on a triple captaincy, I think. And then Arsenal, he might get that. I mean, what date is that Arsenal game? Like, what's the actual date of it? The 15th of February. All right, so it'll be the week after that they've got the Champions League game. So I think it's the following Tuesday. But then does that mean that they've got, just because I think this is the stage of the Champions League where they split it random.
Oh yeah, of course.
I'll double check when Man City play Leipzig, what day it is. Leipzig versus Man City.
So while you do that, I think if you are sitting there like me with only 2 Arsenal players, the fact that they double, like they play what you said, 5 games in 3 days, I think, and then they also play in the blank game week 28 that's coming up because of the FA Cup Arsenal are out of the FA Cup. It makes Arsenal so like they are probably the must-own team for a triple up at the minute. Speaking of my sideways move, Dan, like selling Martinelli, he's currently got, after I checked before recording, bearing in mind it's a Tuesday, 116k transfers out. And very interestingly, Saka has about 130k transfers in.
Wow.
So it seems like that's the popular move. People are kind of like done with Martinelli and want to go for a bit more safety in the double. Not sure on the others, but like I say, Odegaard's quite highly owned anyway. And I think a lot of people are selling or have already sold the likes of Almiron
Yeah.
for him.
So I've just checked. 22nd of February is when they play Leipzig. So they're in the second round of fixtures. So the first round happens on the 14th, and the second happens a week later on the 22nd. So that means that Man City will play on the 18th of February against Forest. 4 days later, they play in the Champions League. And then on the Saturday, so only a few days after, 3 days later, they're playing Bournemouth away. So actually, I think his minutes are at risk for game week 24-25, which means that, I actually do think you're right, Matt. He's probably going to be absolutely fine for this double. He'll probably play them both and get both 90s. And like for me, the major reason why I don't want to go for an Arsenal attacker or it's an Arsenal midfielder, even though I have strongly considered it today, I just wouldn't have a clue which one to go for.
Like, it'd be Saka, surely. Like for me, I would be thinking,
but or their top point scorer,
or a silly punt on like Nketiah.
But going to midfielders, Odegaard is the second highest point scorer after only 1 point behind Rashford. He has 8 more points than Saka, and he's not on penalties. So, like, I don't think it is just a simple case of you would put it on Saka, especially with how the teams play. Like, I think Saka might have maybe a little bit more joy against Man City, but I think against Brentford at home, Odegaard's probably the one that's going to pick up that little pocket of space when they play a really low block. I don't think Saka's going to get loads of joy.
Perhaps not. No.
So I'm
not. Don't know. There's so much variance. Like there's so much opportunity. Like we mentioned last week, when we mentioned the triple captaincy, trying to nail down who that person is in the team who's going to get the haul is so much harder in Arsenal as opposed to like City, Liverpool, Spurs, which is why I'm like you, I'm kind of against wanting to put the captaincy armband on an Arsenal player. It's a bit more of a lottery. We've talked about Arsenal loads though anyway. We talk about them every week. So I want to kind of try and move on just a little bit and talk about the fixtures. So upcoming fixtures we're going to do really, really quickly because I don't want to run over too much.
Yeah.
Doubles have been announced for game week 25. So although it's a blank game week for Newcastle, Brentford, Brighton and Man United, we've now got doubles for Arsenal, Everton, Liverpool and Wolves. Now, this is interesting because I'm sitting here, like I said, with 7 players who blank right in game week 25 because they're good players. So I've got double Newcastle defence and Trippier and Botman. I've got Matoma, I've got Dunk, I've got Rashford, I've got Shaw, and I've got Fernandes. And all of them have been doing well recently. Now, I've looked and kind of had a little peek to see the teams who play in game week 25 and game week 28 are Aston Villa, who play Everton and Bournemouth, which is a nice couple of fixtures. Bournemouth play Man City and Aston Villa, with a possible double in between. Chelsea play Tottenham and Everton. Crystal Palace play Liverpool and Arsenal, with a possible double in between. Nottingham Forest have got West Ham and Newcastle. And then teams who double in 25 and play in 28 are Arsenal, who've got Leicester and Everton. And then they play Crystal Palace in 28. Everton have got Aston Villa and Arsenal. And then they play Chelsea in 28. And then possibly, if Sunderland can beat Fulham tomorrow night, Liverpool will play Fulham in game week 28, along with their double in 25 of Crystal Palace and Wolves. So Liverpool are starting to come back into the conversation, although they're shocking. They're sitting there with a double, and they play in the blank game week with half decent fixtures around that. It's just whether we what do you think? Like, this is coming back to my -8 really. What do you think of kind of targeting double game week players, targeting fixtures over players who are performing well? Like, do I get rid of, say, Fernandes over Kevin De Bruyne? I'm definitely not getting rid of Mitoma and Dunk because I know Brighton are going to double at some point. But like getting rid of Botman for, I don't know, let's say James Tarkovsky, who will double against Aston Villa and Arsenal in 25, and then play Chelsea in the blank game week.
Yeah, I think getting rid of Botman's fine. Like, I don't think we've got the easiest fixtures coming up anyway for clean sheets. Like, in terms of, with Bruno gone, we're a very different team for the next two games with Bournemouth and Liverpool, whether you like it or not. Then there's the blank, so useless, and then Man City away. Like, I don't care how bad they are, that's still a tough game to keep a clean sheet in, even if you do end up winning. So the next four, I wouldn't be having double Newcastle defence personally. I just think stick with Trips. He's. I think you probably want to. I don't know. Maybe if you wanted a double, we're on a Newcastle podcast, obviously. Then I think the other option's probably Callum Wilson. He tends to get like gluts of goals and then he'll go quiet, doesn't he? So he's being quiet. I know he got a bit of stick for not putting away a couple of chances, but he still scored one. And you can envisage him getting a couple of chances against Bournemouth away and Liverpool at home. You'd see him getting a couple of chances in that game, how bad their defence is. But, I think I'm just trying to appease a Newcastle audience by saying that as well at the same time. Yeah. I think in terms of targeting those Liverpool doubles, like
Gakpo maybe
don't really interest me too much, like, because where are Liverpool on here? So they've got Everton at home, which is arguably still an okay fixture, but they tend to beat Everton at Anfield. Let's be honest. So okay, then they've got Newcastle away, so you're probably not going to want them for that. Palace away, which isn't an easy game.
Notoriously a difficult fixture for them, I think.
Well, I cannot remember. I think so. They're a bit mixed on. They either really struggle or they win 7-1.
Yeah, and obviously current form would suggest they're going to be miserable.
Yeah, Wolves at home. Wolves are good defensively at the minute. Then Man United at home, which isn't a good fixture for them. Man United are looking pretty good at the minute. Bournemouth away, so it's an away game. Fulham at home, okay, fine. And then they've got Man City and Arsenal twice in a row. So when I look at that over an 8-game period, and then when you look at the double wedged between Newcastle and Man United, you are literally getting them in because they play twice. It's up to you if you want to do that to yourself, but I'm not sure if I will. Especially defensively, I need to see some from the Everton and Newcastle game before I start bringing them in. And I think what's more realistic, because I currently have Salah, what's more realistic is that I still sell Salah to fund a Kane move. Yep. And then my third striker becomes the Stormtrooper himself, Darwin Núñez.
Nice.
Because over the course of 2 games, I'd expect him to get 1 goal with these 18 chances.
Yep, and I think I'm tempted to go with Gakpo. So just for a bit of fun, I think you'll start Crystal Palace and Wolves as a double. I think quite a few people will get suckered in. I think a lot of people will get suckered in with Salah because his ownership will start going up again just for that double alone. But it'll be interesting to see how people move towards Liverpool players in the next few weeks. But we'll obviously talk about that when the time comes. we'll not go into exactly what the teams have been and who scored what points. I know you had a triple captainship played.
Yeah.
How has that catapulted your rank with a game to go?
So unfortunately, Martial is injured. I kept him. I took the risk, thinking he might get half a game, maybe get a goal off the bench, then play the second one. That was my hope. Didn't work out that way. But in terms of my rank, so I took a -4, and I am now exactly like 1 million. Basically.
Nice one.
So
Very
that's
nice.
400k rise at the minute. But I have Salah coming off my bench now for 2 points, which I think puts me just inside the top 1 million according to live FPL rank, with triple captain Rashford and Luke Shaw still to play.
No Fernandez.
Well, that was it. I was thinking about it a little bit more long term, where I wanted to bring in Odegaard and Saka. That was me -4.
Right.
And they obviously did nothing, and Fernandez scored, which was frustrating. I took the risk with Martial. So I took I don't mind. I took like a measured risk. It didn't work.
Well, right.
But obviously, still having the green arrow was helpful. 78 points -4 with 2 players left. Game week rank of 175k.
Very nice. Very nice. So yeah, I mean, I'm having a good week as well. Like even though I didn't play the triple captaincy, I think because my rank is so high, that people didn't really triple captain because they're not playing anymore. I might be doing myself a disservice there. Feel sorry for me, everyone. I think I had 70 points off the top of my head. 70 points with just a triple cap, just a normal captaincy. Was 2.8 million, now 2.2. I've got Rashford, I've got Bruno, I've got Shaw, and I've got Nonto of Leeds still to play. Annoyingly, Nonto got a 2-pointer, even though he was the highest chance creator in the other 14. So I think he created like 5 chances against, who was it that played? Forest. So hopefully they'll get a little new manager bounce and absolutely do over Man United, and get a hat trick. That would be beautiful. And of course I had a bit of a benching headache. I had wasn't sure that I benched Botman or Gabriel or Dunk. Played Botman. Sorry, no, didn't play Botman. I played Gabriel. Benched Dunk for his 6-pointer. So that was inevitable. I was going to get that wrong anyway, like regardless. So yeah, not bad. Still climbing. Hopefully, with all chips intact, I'll continue rising up.
Matt, just quickly before we move on to the next segment, because I feel it imperative to say, in terms of players from teams that you might not be thinking of, we've already said a couple of times, Wolves are looking better defensively. The stats are sort of backing that up since, I can never pronounce his name, Lopetegui has came in. Their next fixtures, Southampton, Bournemouth, then a double in the blank game week of Fulham and Liverpool, Spurs and Newcastle, but then Leeds and Forest. I'd be looking, if you're wanting to make a defensive change for like you say, for Botman, I'd be looking for Wolves defender.
Craig Dawson.
Dynamite
in the air.
But it's up to you if you want to go for Craig Dawson. I'd just go for, why not? But if you want to go for another one, that's entirely up to you. But I'd recommend going for Wolves defender. And also, even after this week, after they play Liverpool away, Everton have Leeds at home, then Villa at home, Arsenal away, Forest away, then Brentford at home. So that's another double during your blanks, 5 games. Obviously, you want to be going for Everton defenders. I think that's where we'll probably need to move to for those blanks. Wolves and Everton, because how much they'll cost will be peanuts. And they've got 2 defensively minded and astute coaches now that might actually keep them some clean sheets. So that's my hot take before we moved on.
Love it. No, that's great. In terms of those 7 players that I mentioned before, like that, I'm going to have to shift. As I mentioned, that I want to keep Brighton assets. Shaw will be getting shifted at some point, probably to someone like Craig Dawson. And Botman was already eyeing up to Tarkovsky, who was probably, I think he's 4.2 million, Tarkovsky. So there's a lot of value there if Everton start keeping clean sheets.
You probably get bonus as well, Tarkovsky.
Absolutely. Dyche, wet dream. So, so let's play What's the Point very quickly so we can round things up. 3-2
Yeah.
to you. It's your turn to play. I am going to pull this back to 3-3. Go. Play the jingle. Woo!
Woo! Woo! Woo!
Woo!
Woo! Woo!
There we go.
Right. I did have my players. I've lost my players. Let's find my players. I've found my players. Okay, then. So, trying to put these in alphabetical order. Right.
Suspense.
I know. So, we've got Calvert-Lewin. We've got, how do you pronounce his name? Nonto. Is the G silent?
The G, I believe the G is silent.
So Calvert-Lewin, Nonto, and Vinicius of Fulham.
So really, really highbrow, top class assets we're going for here.
Yes.
Right, so I am going to go for Gnonto, Vinicius DCL.
Wrong. DCL is the highest with 25 points. He's the highest.
Why do I own Nonto?
Second with 24, and then Nonto has 23.
That's upsetting, isn't it? That's upsetting. Didn't we start this game right so well, where it was like literally like back and forward, like Federer and Nadal in their prime, and now it's like just it's quite pitiful, to be honest. I feel like we lost track of who's doing what. Obviously, as the numbers have risen higher,
it's 3-2.
It's become a bit more difficult. It is 3-2, yes. Considering how many weeks we've been doing this for.
Yes.
The fact we've only got 5 right is a little bit of a concern.
It's going about as well as our FPL season.
Yeah. I mean, some better than others.
That was tough, that one. That one, I think, was the hardest one I'm giving you.
You don't say.
That was sheer desperation.
Like, honestly, next week I'm giving you, like, I don't know, what's his face? Brandon Williams or something from Man United.
Oh, Christ.
It'd be easy because I think he's on 0. So we'll quickly do a roundup of the Gallowgateshots mini league before we go. As of right now, it is a draw at the top. Both of these people have 1,417 points, which is far more than either of us. Scott Hutchinson, who was top last week, is still top now, technically. And Liam Woodfine are both drawing.
I thought you said 2 people. That was just one person and a myth.
And a robot, yes.
Yes.
Yes, quite. We'll keep this draw going for as long as possible until he actually drops in one of our DMs. Not like that, though. So, yeah, we went there. So they've both got the same Man United players. So they've got triple Man United of Shaw, Rashford and Bruno. So obviously they're going to stay drawing going into double game week 23. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds next week. I think that's it. That was lovely. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Hopefully we won't talk about Arsenal or Man City that much next week. I feel like we've done that loads recently.
Yeah,
so try and
once this doubles over, we can just talk about other things. Like I say, I think teams like Wolves and the Scouse Mackhams will come into our thinking a bit more, and we can maybe pull away from that template a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think the fixtures are going to really dictate. Tomorrow, like I mentioned, there's FA Cup games. So the picture of who's going to play in that blank game week 28 is going to start to become a lot clearer too. So in the meantime, have a lovely week. Enjoy all of the football at the weekend. I think the deadline is on a Saturday at 11 o'clock. If Dan just wants to quickly double check that, he's nodding away. It's good news. I'd guessed because it was Friday last time and it's not normally a Friday twice. That's the in-depth stuff that you're going to get from us. Cheerio.
See you later, everyone. Bye.
Bye.